This is Hermes speaking, also known through this channel as Ascended Master Djehuty, spelled Djehuty, also known as Thoth, Saint Germain, and Merlin. And as an Ascended Master, I have a particular kind of job to do when I'm not embodied as a human. The definition of an Ascended Master is a soul who has lived human lives, yet when not embodied as a human, holds space for a certain kind of teaching or healing for all humans. And my job has to do with translating, teaching you whatever you need in order to learn to evolve. Whatever it is that you need in order to evolve as a divine being that you are. And so periodically when I come through this channel, we have a very specific focus of lunation meditations or energy work MP3s or something like this. Today we're going to do a brief video which is about grief and the importance of dealing with grief and pointing out some things to you. Living in a time when you're having this pandemic and people have passed away and there is a lot of uncertainty, so there's fear. Some people may be inclined toward worry and anxiety because of the uncertainty of the present moment and the uncertainty of the next, the future, the next moments. And yet I want you to be really clear about how this particular pandemic, this coronavirus pandemic fits in with this collective learning about grief. Now, nothing here in this message to you is meant toward inspiring fear, but I want to point out some things that may help you contextualize some of the experiences that some persons are having, but also the collective is experiencing. And also, just to be clear, as a being who might be channeled or who is channeled by many people, any being who might be channeled by multiple people, the filter of the channel's experience sometimes does come in. And so there is a filter on this channel living in the United States with what he would describe as this failure of leadership regarding the coronavirus. This is not to bring politics into this, but just to understand that as I speak through him, I'm speaking about some things that in some other places in the world are less affecting people, just to be clear. This is true, by the way, for all channel material. There is a channel, and even if that channel is out of the way, sometimes word choices are based on that channel's vocabulary, etc. So sometimes there's a little filter. So regarding grief, the importance of dealing with grief, I want to be clear to you that in many lifetimes lived on Earth, you experience all wonderful and all not wonderful things. The memories of all of your lifetimes are stored in your unconscious layers. Therefore, within your energy field, which includes your experience of yourself as a conscious being and this quite rich and dense unconscious memory data bank, you could think of your unconscious as a memory data bank. You possess all manner of experiences and memories of experiences, many of which are not happy, many of which may not have been effectively grieved in other lifetimes. So one of the functions of this coronavirus is to put from a collective point of view, from a point of view of all that is, it is not a plague sent from, God to punish people, nothing of the kind. But it is part of learning to adapt to life on Earth, learning to deal with natural phenomena. And also one of the things is learning to deal with grief, putting pressure on your attention on the respiratory tract, which is where grief will manifest if you have not processed it from this lifetime or other lifetimes. Associated with the fourth chakra, there, but physically affecting the lungs. So sometimes you don't deal with grief as a human in this lifetime or other lifetimes because it seems overwhelming. It seems that it could swallow you up because you aren't sure if you are strong enough to handle it or to process it. So it is extremely important that you deal, in a broad sense, deal with your feelings. You know this. You've heard me and other beings and humans all around you sometimes tell you this. This channel in his work will tell you this till he's blue in the face. It is important to deal with your feelings. What I want to put your attention on is, however, this record of multiple lifetimes stored in your unconscious. Things that you would think have nothing to do with you, with your identity, personality, and your egoic personality structure and context. But you are in fact consciousness that exists across time. Some of you think about the notion or the existence of soul, and some of you think that soul is a positive influence that will save you from poor choices or difficult experiences. But in fact, soul is a portion of divine consciousness that is observing you learn through human experiences. What is it like to be human? We often say, imagine a being as a kind of experimenter, watching a bunch of different things happen and noting on a clipboard, checking things off. That's what that feels like. Aha, when I'm human and I have this experience, oh, that's what that feels like. The soul is learning through your many human lifetimes. It cannot be wounded. It cannot be offended. You cannot harm it. It is not punishing you as if some personified deity that has some ethical or mores structure and you've transgressed or something, so that's how suffering occurs. Pain is part of life. That's why suffering occurs, as a vehicle to help you learn how to go from fear into love. Now, what I've said so far touches on a bunch of different teachings that have come through this channel from me. But what I want to really focus on is that you have an energetic reservoir in this cache of memory data bank for many lifetimes. There is grief that is unprocessed. And it is imperative that you learn how to deal with it. But parts of you believe it's too much to deal with. So if you are under quarantine, under lockdown, these kind of 3D terms of social distancing and all this, you are being at home, or mostly at home, perhaps with your feelings. And I want you to realize that the less you are moving around, the less your linear logical mind or left brain is producing or feeling productive, your feelings will come up. So on one level, the quarantine serves to create space for you to feel what has not been dealt with in your field. So boundaries, if you are surrounded by other people because others are experiencing the same thing. It is important for you not to absorb others' frustration, anxiety, pain, grief, etc. So if you are living with others or dealing with others on a regular basis in close proximity, be clear that you do not have to absorb their energies, because they need to learn how to deal with theirs, but you need to learn how to deal with yours. This is not to make you a callous, cold person who is not loving and helpful to others, but to point out to you that you kind of need all of your bandwidth right now to deal with your stuff. And you can be there for others too, but don't carry theirs. Don't fill yourself up with the things that others don't know how to feel or don't know how to process. You can help them. You can even help them with some of the suggestions that I'm going to offer during this teaching. But be clear that you do not need to absorb things from others in case it will help them. They may feel temporarily supported, but it will not help anybody in the long run. So how far does grief go? You don't know. How deep does it go? You don't know. In any given thing that's coming to the surface for you, you don't know. How long will it take? You don't know. How much might I have to cry or feel helpless? You don't know. These are all planning questions, logistical minded questions from your linear logical self or your mind, your personality and your egoic construct. This is fine. It wants to plan, it wants to organize. But the kinds of things, the grief or powerlessness, these kinds of disempowered feelings you are dealing with now, do represent connections to other life issues. So it is not just right now, though it's triggered by right now. You might have particular feelings about something that's happening right now. But as consciousness that exists across time, you are actually experiencing things for many lifetimes rise up, bubble up, come to the surface. And this time of, in certain parts of the world, of intense focus on the experience of loss, uncertainty, powerlessness, if leaders don't lead. The actual death count that is mounting in certain places, especially in the US. There is a reaction you're having to that, but also it points to something else across the Earth timeline in some other lifetimes. Now, if you are interested in this multi-life perspective, the channel has a playlist of videos on YouTube of 2012/Mayan calendar videos. He can't remember what it's called, one or the other. And he's saying he'll add this video to that list so you can actually find it easily. Because one of the teachings that I offer, and this is germane to your experience, whatever it is, during this particular pandemic, is that at the end of the Mayan calendar, while you may have expected, because you were taught by spiritual teachers or something, to look out for some major event that was transformative and would change everything, and then seemingly nothing happened, and so you forgot about it. In fact, at the end of the Mayan long count calendar, which is what you have called 2012, or the Mayan calendar, it's a series of calendars nested within each other that all end, or all ended, on the same day. So, it marks the beginning of a process, the end of one process of coalescing and aligning tools, and also the ability to manage multidimensional awareness. Then it begins a process of needing to deal with what is felt and sensed and remembered through emotions for many lifetimes. So one way we've talked about this, the channel and myself, is that you suddenly, after eons of collecting tools, suddenly the toolbox is full. You have every tool you need to heal what you need to heal. Yet, at the same time, the ability to access multiple dimensions, in other words, your own multidimensionality, your own other life selves, your own past life selves, is now complete. So you have all the tools you need to heal stuff from across the timeline, and the doors are now all open for things across the timeline that need deep healing to come forward. And I've used this image, you may have heard this from the channel, of being in a room full of cubicles where the walls are taller than you are, the cubicle walls, meaning there's space above them, and you can see this, the ceiling and the lights and whatever, and there's airflow. And you can kind of hear people as they have their own conversations or type on their keyboards or whatever. This is in an office environment. But beginning with the end of the Mayan long count calendar, what you call 2012, the veils between dimensions is one way to think of it. It's one way I say it as a primary reference point. Begin to fade or melt or recede or part. But in the context of this image of a cubicle room, a room full of cubicles, cubicle farm, some of you have said you would call it, the cubicle walls have gone down slowly. So instead of hearing from the next cubicle or two cubicles over, somebody else on a phone call, instead of hearing that murmuring or mumbling or faint thing where you can't quite make out the words, suddenly you look over, the wall is down, you're looking at somebody on the phone who's looking right at you saying, and this is why I'm terrified, because this thing has happened and I don't know what I'm going to do. Which will take you aback. It will surprise you. It will occupy your attention. It will grab you. This is another life self of yours. The ones that come to the surface. Today is a date in 2020. The Sun of the Mayan long count calendar, as far as we're concerned, has ended in October 28, 2011. You say 2012, and people think it's a winter solstice in late December of 2012, and yet the actual date it ended was October 28, 2011, and then there's this adjustment period. This is just different scholars have counted the days differently. that the Mayan calendar specifies, and October 28, 2011. So since then, you have been dealing with, unavoidably, these parts of you. You cannot escape it. The most intense unresolved issues from other lifetimes, the most serious, most impactful issues now are on the surface and do not go away. Before, you might catch a bit of that conversation from across the room or on the other side of the wall. But now the wall has receded and you are being faced down by subpersonas or other life, you'd say past life selves. But their emotions are real. In real time, you are feeling them, confronted by them, occupied. Your attention is grabbed. So what before would come up, wax and wane, would ebb and flow, would come up and go down again, would float to the surface as a major issue for a day, a week, a month, a year, and then maybe relax a little bit as situations or circumstances in your life would change. Now they're on the surface permanently. You must deal with them. Well, for many, many people on the planet, there's anger, frustration, powerlessness. And for many, many, many people, and those are all universal themes, but grief is the one that is now most in need of healing. How do I move on from loss? How do I deal with the sadness of feeling powerless? These are both ways of, two of several ways to look at grief. As this death toll from the pandemic rises, this will get louder for some of you. But even so, even if it stopped or tapered off quite significantly, a number of you would feel this urge to grieve those who have been lost, or to try to send love or help or something to those who have lost someone. Because within the depths of your human self is the human heart, your own emotional center. You have the desire to help and be there for others. Within the depths of that human heart, you feel what others feel. Now, as I said a few minutes ago, I want you to ensure you don't take on or absorb and carry and fill yourself up with the feelings, including the pain and grief and sorrow of others, or frustration or worry or anxiety or whatever. But even if you don't do that, there is part of you that, in being clear and healthy and natural and normal, feels on behalf of others, feels the loss that others feel. And your own portion of this needs attention. Yes, community matters. Yes, you being there for each other matters. And I don't want you to edit any impulse to be there for others. This is not the teaching. But the teaching is that you realize in different ways, many, many people need to confront grief. Thinking specifically about the coronavirus, when people do survive, sometimes they have respiratory issues, or the healing path, the process of recovery is the right phrase, may have them limited as far as lung capacity for a noticeable amount of time. Some may have scarred lung tissue as a result of being infected with the virus, the disease. Do not look at this as any kind of retribution or punishment, but look at it as an individual will manifest something physically to put attention on the energy and emotional field. So, in a broad way, those with asthma and respiratory difficulties may need to look at grief. In a more specific way, those who have survived an illness or an accident or injury that keeps them with respiratory issues may need to deal with grief. Those who have issues with the lungs may need to deal with grief. So I just want to put your attention on this broader picture of how the coronavirus is actually putting collective attention on grief. Now, this is hard, and many people do not want to look at it. So not everyone's talking about the grief. Few are. But this is what humans do, because they don't want to get lost in grief. Of course you don't. Why would you want to be overpowered by an emotion you're not sure how to deal with? So again, what should I do? How do I deal with grief? You feel it. You feel the sorrow. What does it look like? Could look like different things. Could look like staring out the window. Could look like crying. Or jags of each and alternatingly, back and forth. Listlessness, staring out the window, but listen to the parts of you who have the feelings. We encourage you to articulate, whether through a journal or a typing journal or through speaking with someone, to articulate the feelings, perhaps create from that place. You might write music or poetry from that place or something. But to give voice to the parts of you, help them feel heard, and begins a process of processing the feeling. You can't ever go back to some state of innocence before a tragedy occurred. So therefore, some people think certain kinds of pain can't be healed. This is incorrect. It has to do with the definition of healing that people carry or traffic in. Those parts who carry the sorrow and sadness indicate you have been learning as a human as your soul intends, because the soul requires all positive and all negative experiences over millions of lifetimes to learn how to be human. So if you feel pain, it means you're undergoing your human learning. That's frustrating for some people because they have been taught, or they presume, that if they experience pain or difficulty, then they must be doing something wrong. The existence of pain does not mean you deserve suffering. The existence of suffering doesn't mean you did something to deserve it. These are core truths I ask you to memorize and carry with you. Put them on a piece of paper on your refrigerator. Carry them with you. Make a meme and have that be the desktop or the background for your phone. And this leads me to another topic from a bird's eye view or zoomed out place that this channel has not channeled me on before. But he has spoken with me about it, and others have mentioned things, and this topic is now going to be discussed. And it is regarding quarantine, regarding isolation and feeling cut off, regarding the end of the Mayan long count calendar and this opportunity to heal across time what most needs healing. As I described, each of you has an individual portion of whatever unprocessed emotions from many lifetimes you need to learn to deal with, to give voice to cry out, to articulate, to listen to heal, to integrate. Healing isn't erasing the events that cause pain. Healing is in whole making, becoming whole again, integrating parts of you who feel left out or cut out or isolated or ostracized, or as if they're not welcome because they carry something negative or damaging. Well, it has been noted in other channeled work regarding the last great extinction event that Earth has experienced. Some 10, 11, 12,000 years ago, when a great proportion of beings on the planet died out. And those who were left had to do anything to survive. There was a deep collective trauma in those who have survived. As a result of the need to heal that, the human species, or Earth, the life on Earth, the beings on Earth, essentially have been quarantined by what you might call the galactic community. So many humans living on Earth have craved a sense of divine connection, feeling separated from Source. And periodically a prophet or a channel or somebody will come through and give you an empowered message from the other side, or from alien helpers, or beings such as myself. And you may feel comforted that you are not alone. But I want you to understand that the whole species has experienced being alone for quite some time. You must learn individually to heal grief. You must learn to heal the tendency to shame yourself, because if you experience pain, you must have done something wrong. You must have done it wrong. Your individual part of this, healing, integration, will lead to you helping others figure their healing and integration out in some fashion, in some form, through healing work, through art, creativity, through some form. Writing out your story, your memoir, how you have dealt with grief, something. Because you as a collective need to heal this collective memory of chaos, trauma, and grief from this last extinction event. So how can the Earth community re-enter the galactic community? Again, periodically you have these beings, these individuals who will channel beings and bring you messages. A lot of channeled messages seem to have the theme of, dear humans, we love you, you're not alone, don't give up hope. Part of that is about this. But you as an individual, your healing contributes to the healing of the collective, and you must deal with your grief in order to be part of the collective solution. So whatever it is that you need to do to confront the shadows of your own grief, the parts of you you don't want to have to spend time with, is what you must do. And some people are experiencing this physical 3D quarantine in 2020, perhaps extending into some future years as well, if you are seeing this video later. But feeling cut off from other humans or from society, or from the identities derived from the work and the commute and the social participation that you have developed. Being separated from levels of egoic identification, you are left with feelings percolating and bubbling and swirling under the surface that need to come up for healing. So if you have felt trapped at home, as if, well, I want to say, but the channel is objecting, but I'm going to say this, and then I'll qualify it. If you feel being stuck at home as a negative, he would rather I say punishment. But if you feel it as a negative, see if you can also see it as a push toward necessary healing and growth. In other words, the more lonely you feel, the more these things from other lifetimes will come up. The more uncertain you feel, the more that uncertain parts of you from other lifetimes who need to get grounded and be centered and know that there is a way forward will come up. So, how long will healing grief take? There's no answer. What does it look like? Could look like crying, or not being sure what's happening, or feeling waves come up that you don't want to deal with, but you need to let happen. To emote the stuck energy through the heart, and thereby allow such energies through expression to leave. The waves of emotion to come up, crest, and break. Perhaps you might feel very emotional for a time. Perhaps you might worry about being lost. This is why we teach through this channel such an emphasis on grounding processes and tools, meditations and affirmations and imagery and guided meditations and energy work and crystals and all these things. And so as we come to the end of this message for you, I'm inviting you to decide that you are strong enough to deal with whatever emotions are within you and need to be processed. At minimum, begin there. I'm willing to say I'm strong enough to handle whatever it is that needs to be processed. Then, later, you can decide, because I know I'm stronger than pain and fear, because I can bring compassion, therefore I'm stronger. And as you explore all the grounding options, you'll find heart-opening tools as well. This is part of it. Then you can decide I'm willing to feel what needs to be felt. And decide that you're willing to hold space for whatever needs to be processed and said. You are not, if you deal with these such emotions, you are not giving into negativity. That's what people seem to perceive. I don't want to feed the negativity, but then you won't listen to the part who feels negative emotion. And then that energy festers within you. Thank you for investing your time and energy in receiving this message. I hope that it is helpful for you. And take care of yourself.